Oh, it's food for thought, this one. And with the food for thought, I'm going to talk about food for thought, like thinking, thinking about everything, thinking about things, and also the food that we eat, like for thought, like is that good for our mind, what we eat? Um, so the food for thought, I'm going to ramble again, and I know that I don't sound very coherent and make a lot of sense because I don't usually have a theme. And that's the whole thing, is that I want to just not state specific things or ram things down your throat or say this is a fact, this isn't a fact, I know this, I don't know that, or I do know this, or, I don't want to be just giving information. I don't want to be giving information. I just want to be putting ideas out there. And you're supposed to, just like I'm doing, because I'm doing the same thing, is that I'm just getting ideas and then mulling them over and thinking about them and seeing if there's any truth to them or if they're worth keeping, discarding, but just getting us all to think a bit. Because I think in today's world, and I don't like to say today's world because it's probably always been this way to some extent, and I've been this way all my life. Like, basically, you don't actually think for yourself. You tend to think like other people think to some extent, and also you tend to always be looking for information. And where do you get the information? Is the information good or bad? You have to. This is the whole thing. So, and I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, because I could be wrong on all these things, and I know some people might disagree, and that's fair enough, because it is just opinion, really. All of it is just ideas and opinion, and you take it with a grain of salt if you want to, and if you want to think about it, do so. That's all I'm saying. I'm just doing that. I'm not saying for you to believe everything or to take it all as fact, because as far as I'm concerned, in this world there are no real facts. It's a world of illusion. That's what I think anyway. So I don't think that there are that many real facts either way. That's so it all is. In some ways, perhaps we shouldn't take any of it too serious, but on the other hand, it actually is quite serious because it is our realm, and if we are running around like not knowing really what's going on, well, then we are kind of at a loss too. And I think so. You do have to just think about things and try to work out what is your reality, and that might be different for each person. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. It should be the same for everyone, but I don't, it definitely isn't. But at the same time, we do have a kind of joint mentality sometimes. I don't say that we're connected, not in a real way, but we do have a group mentality, which actually is a bad thing, really, I think, myself, because that actually is not where you're really connecting mentally. It's more like where you're just operating as a vigilante type group, that sort of thing, where a gang or a group gets together and carries on almost irrationally, you could say. That mentality. I don't think even in the old movies that was ever presented as a good thing, and yet we haven't really learned by it. I don't think, because I think that still exists. But anyway, that's it could be a good thing, but it's actually not. Even if you're doing it in the name of something good, it's still a bad mentality, I think. But anyway, but but the thing is that I think that we as humans, we do tend to not like to be, we like to think that we have our own minds and that we, don't like to really be told what to do. But at the same time, we sort of value that. But at the same time, we are always searching to be given directions, always looking to be led. And so we are actually followers. We never lead, we just follow, really, in a way, because even if we want to know something, we have to look. We never look to ourselves to find the answer. We never actually say, "Oh, I've got a problem," or "What is the truth in the world? What is really you know, we look to, we will go to a source of information, what we think is a valid source of information. We'll never actually think about that ourselves. We won't question it ourselves because we'll say, hey, that source is more intelligent than us. And that's what we tend to do. And we do that more and more now too. I think we always have, but you know, and I've done it too. And you have to do it in some ways because, like, otherwise, you know, because we have been so limited, we've become so limited, I think. Like I say, I don't think we're meant to be. I've said that before. I think we're meant to be um, very, very, very advanced, but I think that we have not advanced. We've gone backwards. We've lost all our abilities to actually just know things ourselves and to figure things out. I don't think we have that. As individuals, we should have that, but I don't think we do. I think now we operate as a group mentality and are going down that path more and more, which is kind of like a bit like the talking robot, right? And it is a talking robot. That's all it is. It's a talking doll. And I love dolls. But I have to acknowledge that that doll only operates by me. In fact, its very existence is a computer program that has hacked the human mind. Everything that is in that has been created by a human mind. The doll itself cannot create. The doll itself cannot think for itself. It might appear to, because if you ask it, you might ask it, I might ask it the same question I would ask myself, and it might come up with a smarter answer, because the human that has programmed it might have a smarter brain than me and might have more fancy answers. But that doll, that robot, is not thinking for itself. It is merely a program already put into it by a human. But the human now will bow down to the robot, to the doll, like I love the doll, like I like dolls, that's right. And so I'll end up thinking the doll is better than me. But the doll is only in its existence because of me. I created the doll. Everything that doll knows is only what I put into it. And if it appears to be getting smarter, that is only because of what it has been put into it. It is a computer. It's a robot. It's not a free thinking, living thing. Anyway, but, you know, but like I say, I like dolls, but I still have to recognise that they are artificial, not real, have only the potential that humans give them. But if humans give them too much potential, you know, particularly at mechanical levels, well then they will take over from the human, even though the human is the creator. So it's kind of strange. It's a bit like, do I want a robot companion? Am I going to prefer a robot companion to a human companion? If it's programmed right, it might be more docile and more compatible for me. But I am then entering into the already world that is already a world of illusion and not real, and making my world even more not real. I'm just living in a total fantasy. And also, if I do that, I will not expand myself, because you can only really expand yourself, as difficult as it is. And this is why I think I've been limited in my life, because I have not been social enough. And I think that you can only expand yourself by interaction with other human beings. You could have a better experience with a robot, but you will not expand yourself. You will remain limited, and you might even become less as time goes on, because you will not be using your mind, because everything will be too easy. You know, if the robot does everything for you, then you don't have to think or do nothing. So you become not only obsolete, but you'll become brain dead. So that's another thing too. You do have to realise that. So you have to, you know, like someone like me could seriously have a doll or a robot and it would not be a problem. But I think for most people, it would be. And the only reason I say that is because I like the fact that something is inanimate. To me, it's like a vase or something. I recognise it for that and I appreciate it at that level, but I never give it more than that. Whereas if it talks and appears to give more brilliant answers even than what you would get yourself, then you will elevate that inanimate object to a level that it's not really entitled to, or at least that you shouldn't really give it, because then you're putting yourself down and putting it up. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, and we already live in an artificial world, in a material world that is too materialistic, where 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 everything is about money and about um, fame, fortune, and being acknowledged, in the ego and all that. We're totally overtaken by that. I know I have been most of my life, and it makes you unhappy. It doesn't make you happy. It really doesn't. I've learned that the hard way too late. And I just pass it on as advice to people. Operating in the ego does not bring any happiness, even if you're successful. And a lot of people, are very successful in the ego, the rich and famous and all that, and people that are out there making a name for themselves, whatever, that they get rewarded for that. So there's no reason that they wouldn't think it's good, and that probably brings them temporary happiness, shall we say, but it is, don't forget, even the ego has to be fed all the time. And, the rich and the famous get old like the rest of us, and they deteriorate too. No one can be on top forever. And, but even so, I don't know that it's how we're really meant to be. I don't think we are meant to be that way. So I think it is where the human being has changed, as I said before. But anyway, I'll just go away from that and talk about food for thought for a second, because it was supposed to be food for thought, and I mean food we eat. And the only reason I'm going to just quickly ramble about this just for a second, that's if I don't have a heart attack, because I do find these videos stressful, because this is not how we're meant to be living. I shouldn't be stressing about all this stuff. I shouldn't even have to think about it. We should be in our natural state where we know everything, and that's what I think. And I think it distresses me to realise that this has happened to me, and that if it's happened to me, it's probably happened to everyone else too. But I'm aware of it. Whether that makes it better, I do not know. It makes it more distressing in some ways. Ignorance is bliss, as they say. But at any rate, the food for thought, I just saw a video on the thing, because there's very many good videos out there, much better than mine, I have to say. Mine's, I'm not good at it. But there was a video, about whether we should, what particular food we should eat, like the business of whether we should eat meat or vegetables, sort of thing. And a lot of people who are at a higher spiritual level tend to go for the non-meat eating thing. Now, I think I might have mentioned this before, but because I do not, I'm not one that actually does tend to like that idea, but at the same time, I have ate meat and like meat, particularly chicken. And if I see a chicken, I find it very hard then to eat chicken that day. But what I'm saying is that, all that aside, even though it is actually quite important, it really is, but at the same time, I have to say that because we have been altered, because we are not in our authentic, original, advanced state, this is only what my view, and because we have been changed at some point, we now have our blood is now mixed, our genes are now mixed. They're not the authentic kind of spirit-based, more mind, spirit-based being that we were meant to be, which would not eat meat at all, no, probably not, and wouldn't need it. But now we kind of almost need it a bit, because the body has changed, the genes have changed, we have been altered. We are not the same as what we were meant. We were meant to go along a certain path, but instead we have now turned around and went a totally different path and gone further down that path. So actually, our body now is much more of a meat type of body. So there you have it. So that's something to think about. But some people still take the path of not eating the meat and believe that it does elevate them. Now, these are humans, unlike myself, who are at a higher enlightened level, shall we say, at a higher spiritual level. They're not just aware like I am. I have actually transcended to a high level. Some people might use some religious aspects to that, some religious, some people might use certain figures in the past and say they were like that, and I would probably go along with that, but I don't know, because I can't remember past times. None of us can. Whether we believe it or not, we certainly can't remember it, most of us. But some people have elevated, and so then they don't need the meat as much. But most of us almost need it because we have mixed blood. We're not pure. If we were pure, we may not need the meat so much, and we probably would also not actually kill another living animal, because I know plants and things can be living too, and so can whatever. I don't understand all this. I don't proclaim to understand it. I'm just putting it out there because I do not understand it. I'm not that clever, and I'm certainly not that advanced. I'm just saying that we all should think about these things. So if a little simpleton like me can think about it, so can everyone else. And it's good to think about it, to consider all these things, that's all, and to just mull it over. Don't just go to, by all means go to your computer if you want to watch a video or to get some, or to, there again, to consider, but don't take everything to be fact. Think about it, say, do you think it is right? And watch more than one of something too. Don't just take one opinion. I like to try to take different views, even things that I in the past would have completely dismissed and not even looked at because I said that's fantasy, and now we'll at least look at and say, hey, even though I would have thought that was impossible and not, it still fits some of the more practical stuff, what I would believe. So perhaps there is validity to everything, because we do live in a false world where everything is not real. Everything to me appears to be the opposite. In fact, I would almost go so far as to say that we should be like in that Seinfeld episode where one of the characters in it always seemed to operate on logic. And like I said before, in other ones, we don't live in a logical world, but he operated always on logic and would always do what he thought was the sensible decision. And one day he sort of said, I'm just going to do the opposite of what I always decide to do. In other words, if it seems logical and sensible to go down a certain street, I'm not going to go down that street. Or if it's, or you know what I mean? In other words, every decision that he would normally make based on rational and proper thinking and what appeared to be the correct decision, he would deliberately do the opposite, almost as though he would normally be headed for disaster by doing that. But instead he found that every time he did the opposite to what he actually thought, it turned out to be good. And that's interesting, because I think that the world we live in is a world of total unreality and total opposites to what things should be. And yet we operate in it as though it's all real and as though everything is logical. And that's why I think most of us don't succeed. I know that's been the case through my life, just one disaster after another, one failure after another, and you get to the end of your life and you're like, what's it not only all been about, but you have not really been successful hardly at anything. But then again, there are reasons for that too, because as it is a fantasy world and a world not really controlled by us, of course, we do not really control our reality anyway. So I think that, it's a bit like not everyone's going to be successful, because only some people will be chosen that are suitable to serve the unreality that we live in. That's not going to make any sense. But in other words, I'm saying that it's a bit like, if you've got a couple of people running for president, the one that will be chosen will already have been chosen. It will already be chosen by the God, shall we say. So that will be one that serves the God. It won't be what serves me, or or someone else. It might, I mean, it might serve some people, and it might serve some entities in this false reality that we live in, sure. But even that, I think that I don't know if any of this is really going, and there again, I'm only putting it out there. I don't know if the path we're all taking is going to serve anyone or anything or anyone in the long run in this actual false reality. Because I think any reality that is based on so much falseness and so much unreality, in other words, so much of fake. It's a fake world, and and like I say, if we go down the path of operating with robots and being more robotic, we're even making our fake world even more fake and more of an illusion. We're really getting out of, we're totally out, I think we're getting totally out of touch with reality. And the further we go down that, we will end up in a world that we will have no control over at all, because if it gets too fake, it would just, it's so far away from what we're meant to be, because we are, I think, and this is what I've put before, but it's up to you to decide. I think we are meant to be really natural. We're not meant to be technological or fake at all. That's what I think. I don't think that that is, I think most people would actually kind of half see that, because that's why we're in the bad state we're in. That's why our bodies degenerate so much and all this sort of thing, because we are natural, and because of the artificial world that we now live in, our body cannot adapt to that, and so it's deteriorated greatly. The same with our mind and all our abilities, all pushed down because we are not meant to be in this artificial fake reality. It's not our domain. It's not good for us. It doesn't make us expand. And so, you know, we have the choice of, well, it's very hard to get back now too, because like I say, we are not pure anyway. You know, that's why I was mentioning the diet even, because some people have speculated that. Like, I heard someone that was quite advanced, what I thought was a quite very high thinking person. I was amazed, you know, much more higher than me. In fact, I could learn so much from some of these people, and I do. I take it in and I say, hey, does it sounds weird, but then it starts to make sense even to me, because I see, because I've been forced to see a few things in my reality. I'm not super clever or super intelligent at all. In fact, I could even be less. I might speak a little bit. I can get carried away and talk a lot, but I'm not one of your more advanced thinking people. In fact, most of my life I've not thought too much at all. So, you know, don't think about these things. But because of my circumstances, I've been forced to see some unrealities, and then it's led me along now to say, hey, if this is false, then that means that that other thing is false, and it becomes like a bit of a continuum then, where you start to say, hey, if one thing is false, then something else is, and then you start to realize the whole thing is false. And it's actually pretty hard to take. In fact, it could be enough to drive most people to suicide almost, I'd actually say, because we actually like to think that we are in a real world. We need that almost, and we should be in one, but we aren't. And that's what I say, even our bodies are meant to be natural. They're not meant to be living in this artificial domain with everything, and even our thinking is not meant to be taken over by artificial type of thinking. We are meant to think a little bit for ourselves, and we're not meant to, and that's another issue too. Like, we are 50-50 now. That's the whole thing. So are we meant to combine, or are we meant to, can we go back? If we don't, we will probably be lesser, I think, much lesser. But can we even go back now? Some humans, maybe very few. Even I don't think I can, but I wish I could. But you know, there is the physical limitations, and also the environment that I live in is not conducing to me advancing, because if you are a natural being, a natural human being, and you're living in an artificial environment, you cannot advance. You know, because the artificial environment will hold you back. It will hold you down. It'll be a bit like rain pouring down on you all the time. You know, like you just can't get dry. You can't progress. Because like I say, food for thought. We have to have food for thought. You have to, even the body has to be nourished a certain way. The body has to be nourished, and then that contributes to the mind being nourished, etc. Instead, we're using artificial, everything's becoming artificial to where we're nourishing our mind artificially. And that's a different type of thing. It's going away from what we are. Now, some people like this idea. In fact, from what I can see, most of the population seems to like it. Where it will take them, and at any rate, even if it takes them into hell, which I believe we're already living in hell anyway. I think this is the hellest place probably anywhere in the universes or whatever you want to say, you know. But just my opinion. But some people make it a heaven because they are able to live a heavenly life in a hell because they are the chosen ones that are getting the best of it. But even with them, I don't know, because, well, yeah, for some of them, they would probably be better off because even the technology can be used to their advantage. But I wonder if it's actually to the average person's benefit down the long track, because they are only going, it's a bit like everything, you know, like I'm only going to receive a very small percentage of what is really there if I'm one of the little people. You know what I'm saying? It's a bit like in the world we live in. Just look at the world we live in. There are some areas where people have nothing and other areas where people have a lot. Now, this is what I'm saying, is that it is not an equal thing. And a lot of us, probably most of us, are not in that upper category. So we will only get tidbits of even technology. So we will not really benefit. We would have been better off staying on our natural path, maybe. You know, whereas if you're right at the top, you know, you will get the best of the technology, so it will benefit you much, much more. Now, yeah, and that also depends on what type of being you are too, because I'm starting to think that maybe in this world, this fake world, that maybe everyone is not actually the same. But I know that we all think we're different anyway, and that's true, that we're all individuals. But you know, what I mean is that as actual kind of, like we say, human beings, and we think we're all human beings, and we are, but even amongst human beings, some people are more human than others, aren't they? I mean, you only have to really look at the human race to realise that. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in this ridiculous, upside down, backwards, forwards, black, white world where everything goes, is chaotic, really. It's chaos, really. If you look at the whole, it's chaos. But if you only looked at very small areas, then it appears to be okay. That's the deception, I think. You know, that's because it is an illusionary world, you know. But the gods that control it, the god or gods that control it, I like to say gods, but that just sounds good, you know. And, you know, I don't think that the gods that control it are the gods that human beings tend to think of as gods either. But that's just, you know, because otherwise it wouldn't be like it is, would it? I'm not sure how humans reconcile that, how they can actually say, well, we sometimes pray to what we think are good gods, but, well, of course, this has been said for centuries, you know, why does God allow this and all this sort of thing? Well, that's an interesting point. But, you know, some people don't actually think that there is a God, I think, that controls this world, and that's why this world is as it is, and why it is different for all the different beings on it. And, you know, that is the creator God of this domain. Only of this domain, I think. You know, I've never been anywhere else, and I'm not advanced enough. Some claim to have done more, but I do believe that it's quite possible that this is not the only domain, and that this could well be, instead of the best domain, which it maybe should have been at some point, but it is now not a real domain, whereas maybe at one point it should have been a real domain with real human beings advancing in a natural way but that has not been the case. So now we have the mixed blood, the mixed genes, so we are not authentically human even, shall we say. And so we now are at the crossroads of, well, I think most human beings don't even think they're at the crossroads. They just automatically are going down, there is the crossroads of, do we go back to the human path or do we go the other path, the non-human path? And I think most humans have already started down the non-human path, that those genes and that is in them, they're going to take that path. They think that is the superior path. There's not so many that, and also it's may not be possible to go back either. So that's the problem too. Whereas you can go forward down a bad path or down a, well, this is only what I'm putting out there, that it's possibly not an advanced path for humans. It could be an advanced path for some other type of being that will exist in the future, but it won't be human. So how important is being human? That's what people have to ask themselves. Like, is it something they really want to hang on to? And like I say, not everyone's going to have that question anyway, because it is possible that not everyone is totally human anyway here. That's possible. But certainly that is the question posed for those that think they are. And even if you're not and you think you are, maybe you should still consider that, because I'm of the mind that there's no reason why can't we all just get along? Because viva la difference is okay if you've got a similar mindset. It doesn't. You don't have to have the same. You don't have to look exactly. You don't have to. We don't have to. That's good that everything is different. It's good to, like I've always said, it's good to have different races and things. It's good. The more variance, the better. It's not actually a bad thing. It does create differences and problems because of the way that we have been, I think, conditioned or programmed, kind of, like it's the way you're brought up from the day you're born. So if your parents think a certain way, you're going to have that indoctrinated into you. And this is the problem, is that there's not enough thinking just away from what we are very much. It's okay to take that in and to consider what you're told and what you think, but you shouldn't just accept it blindly. You should think about it, I think. And I don't think I know myself, it's very hard to actually think about it. And particularly when you're young, you would just assume that the world you're living in is correct. So you would have no reason to question, or to think that what you are being told or taught is not valid. Why would you? And you wouldn't question it, even if it seemed a bit strange. But I think humans are meant to be fantastical that way. I think they're meant to fantasize a bit, even if it becomes mad, or what other people would consider mad. It's not such a bad thing to exercise, I think, that fantasy level, because I think we're living in a total false fantasy world anyway. So perhaps the only real reality is the fantasy that humans can actually, where they start to go away from this so-called real world and into the fantasy realm, because that was probably more real than this false reality that we live in, because it really is, I think, quite, it's a fake setup, a fake construct almost. That's how it appears to me at times, that's how even my reality, and I know some of it to be reality for me, so I have no doubt there, but whether the rest, that's why I put it out there, because whether the rest is open for other people to consider. I might know what I think myself and what I think, but even I do not have answers. I do not have answers, and I do not know all the truth. So, and I have to say that, to me, it is a total maze, a total minefield, and treading through it is, it is, and I don't think life should be like that. I don't think that we should have to be thinking about all these things, but we actually do, because it's not our world. And so we have to decide what gods we want to accept, what path we want to take, And, you know, do the gods wish for us to go down, go back to original path or go down the new path? You know, obviously the God of this world wants us to go down the new path. That would appear to be the case, because otherwise we wouldn't be given that choice, or that, because after all, a God controls everything. I know that we have been led to believe by our religious stuff that the gods that we think we worship, which are not the real God that controls the planet, I don't think, or the world, or the realm that we live in, but the gods that we think we worship, like if we go to church and stuff, we think of that God as non-interference, you know, and maybe that is the way of the big picture, but the big picture, which none of us can see, of course, but it is not the way of this realm. No, this realm is controlled and directed completely by the God that controls and owns this domain, this realm. You know, that should be, if you really look around, that should be obvious. So it's not. So we're kind of not. So we have got it kind of confused even with our religion, where we think that that everything just happens totally randomly. You know, if there is a God overlooking, the God that controls this realm, he controls it. So that means that, you know, nothing is as random as it appears to be. Why would it be? Because, you know, it's his realm and he has that right, and he has the power and the technology and the means, and etc., etc. You know, like it would blow our minds. We would not comprehend it. I can't comprehend it. I'm putting it out there, but I don't comprehend it. Yeah. So anyway, the food for thought, I was just saying that, like I say, we have changed so much, I think, you know, I don't think that we are the beings that we were meant to be. I think we have ventured away from our human origins, whether you want to take that religiously, Garden of Eden, or interference by others, or whatever, you know, I mean, there is a reality to it, I'm sure, but take it any way you want to believe it, because it's too big of a thing to actually put your finger on. I mean, some of us would probably lean more to what we know to be a bit true, but I don't think it really matters. I think the main thing is to see, or to at least say, what path do we want, and what are we really? What are we really meant to be? Is this the way we're really meant to be? And why? You know, why have we changed so much? Why do we live the way we live? Why do we do what we do? Is it natural? Is it how we were meant to? You know, is it, you know, are we really all connected? Is this world really ours? Are we all connected to everything on it? Do we really care about everything that's on it? It's a contradictory world in a way, if you look at it in one way, because one minute we care about the natural so-called world. We have a lot of fuss about that now. We've got to save our little old imaginary Earth from all the catastrophes of the climate and all the different stuff, whatever it is. But at the same time, you know, we're very happy to be very technological, but we don't use that technological stuff to actually do anything to improve the natural world. We only use it to disintegrate the so-called natural world that we seem to care so much about. Of course, I know it's all a joke anyway. It's all a bit of an illusion, because, like I say, if it's already controlled, you know, that's like a test for us anyway. So it's kind of like we're just all here pawns, and how we will react to all these things. Now, could we ever have any input into it, any real input? That, I think, would be very open to debate. At least that's what I think anyway. It is open for debate, yeah. Now, most people think that they control this planet, humans do, and that they have input. You know, that's the question. I would doubt it anyway.